Marhaba, and welcome to the Matrix Green Pill, where real people connect.
Hello and welcome back to the Matrix Green Pill podcast. My name is Hilmarie Hutchison and I'm the CEO of Matrix Public Relations. Today I'm joined by my lovely co-host, Shireen. Welcome, Shireen. How are you today?
Hello, Hilmarie. I am great. Thank you so much. I'm also really looking forward to speaking to our inspiring guest today. Allow me to introduce you guys to Rana Akkad. Without giving too much of the story away, Rana had her middle son Jad diagnosed with autism. And after struggling to find a school in Dubai that would admit him, she decided that she would be opening a first of its kind in the region. A top-notch, non-profit school with the mission that would be to embrace children like her own that are not accepted in mainstream schools, yet their impairment is not severe enough to go to a special needs center.
Wow, she certainly has an incredible story to share. This has also earned her multiple awards, including the 2018 Female Entrepreneur of the Year Award at the Women in Lead Economic Forum, and in 2019, the Time Out Kids Outstanding Contribution Award. Absolutely inspiring. Rana, welcome and thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you for having me. It's an absolute pleasure. Thank you.
So Rana, let's start with the basics. Could you please tell our audience a little about you, your background, and how you ended up here in the UAE?
So I'm originally Syrian. I guess ended up in the UAE, typical story of meeting the right guy, getting married, moving here. I'm blessed with the 3 boys. And I've been here for 17 years now.
Wow, incredible.
Yeah.
Amazing. Okay. So now since 2010, you have had quite a difficult journey. Would you please introduce Jad and his story to our audience?
So as I mentioned, I have 3 boys. My middle one, which by then he was only my second, he had a very easy delivery. Everything was going by the book. Everything's fine. Until one day I realized that he wasn't really communicating anymore. He wasn't actually really calling me anymore. He was around a year and a half. And, a year and a half, it's not like you're not expecting a full conversation, but, the whole typical mama, baba, or bol, and all that, which he knew how to say. But all of a sudden, I just realized that he wasn't anymore. I did have a couple of red flags. I would approach my husband or family members and be like, when was the last time Jad looked at you or spoke or tried to call you? And funny enough, because everyone would tell me, yeah, it was the other day. And I'm like, yeah, but when was the other day? So everyone thought I was, it's like, no, you're being your helicopter mom. You're just all in your head. He's fine. He might be just shy. Until I guess breaking point was his 2nd birthday when he just didn't know how to blow the candle. And I have it on video, him blowing the candle on his first. Well, he was spitting all over the cake, but he was doing the job. And I had it on video. So the fact that he knew how to do it on his 1st birthday and not the 2nd was a big alarming sign for me. So this is it. And this is where I guess in a way I was introduced to the autism world. I first suspected it was his hearing and I had him taken to check his hearing. And this is where I had to see a speech pathologist before the hearing test. And he was the first person that tells me if we had any one with autism in the family or if I even knew what that was, because we're talking about 12 years ago. And funny enough, I was absolutely ignorant about what autism was. So this is when I found out that Jad was diagnosed with autism.
A difficult situation for any parent, I'm sure. So what were some of the challenges that you started to face after Jad's diagnosis?
So as I mentioned, it was 12 years ago. Unfortunately, till now, there isn't much education about autism. The blessing, but same time curse. For children on the spectrum, it doesn't physically show. So a lot of parents tend to diagnose them late. B, they might be judged easily. So for example, if a child is having a meltdown in a mall or not knowing how to communicate or does an awkward noise or whatever it is, they can easily be judged or labeled or given the mom a look of your child is not well behaved or raise him or awkwardness. So this is as simple as it sounds. It's really difficult on parents. The hard part I had is basically educate parents or other family members and the community of how to deal with children on the spectrum, that at the end of the day, they're very smart. They're still human at the end of the day. And that's what I'm trying to say, which broke my heart because they always had that awkward look or awkward behavior of not knowing how to deal with them. The other very much challenging, at least in my case, so there are different kind of children on the spectrum and different diagnoses. It's very wide. And some of the children, what happens with them is what happened with my son, which is they're born 100% neurotypical, no red flags, and then they regress. I think this is one of the most heartbreaking things that can happen to a mother, because the fact of seeing your child developing normal and then regressing, the first and easiest thing to do is blame yourself. I guess if he was born that way, you'd say, it's God's will, it just happened, nothing to control. But seeing him being perfect and then not saying he's less perfect after that, but you know what I mean, like having more struggles in life. I know as a fact, a lot of moms, including myself, will just blame themselves about it. And this is by far the darkest place you can go to.
Yeah, such a difficult situation to be in. And you mentioned that when Jade was first diagnosed, you knew nothing about autism. And I think a lot of people are still in that situation. And because of that, there's a lot of misinformation about children with autism. So what are some of the misconceptions that you see?
So as I said, it's basically the confusion of between a child that might be having a meltdown or sensory issue or communication issue versus being spoiled or not knowing how to behave. It might be also belonging in the community, which is the basic right for everyone. Just to share, I mean, how I ended up where I am or what I had to start to be here. It's really easy for people to tell you they know what you're going through and what you're feeling. I mean, they're trying to do their best, especially family members and friends, but at the end of the day, no one really feels your pain.
Sure.
And because of that, I guess back then I felt so lonely. And I myself, I mean, I had to get my dad even a book to understand what autism is. He was in his 70s and he's like, I've never heard of, like, what is autism? This is how new, unfortunately, I'm going to say in this part of the world it is, or how much in denial or ignorant people are about it. So I was so lonely back then, which is basically I was losing my mind. And just to get some support from people that understood me, I started blogging. I just went to the computer and I just started sharing my stories. I started saying my fears, my guilt, what I thought was right or wrong, and was just trying to seek if was I the only one that this was happening to. And you'd be shocked for such a maybe sad, depressing topic to have so many followers. I suddenly started getting so many people sharing their pain, sharing their fear. Sadly, most of them were anonymous. They didn't want to say who they were because of cultural reasons, but it was amazing, beautiful, sad that we all shared the same fears and challenges for our kids.
For those who haven't heard of it, can you please tell us about your portal, Autism in Dubai?
Yes, so I called it back then Autism in Dubai. As I said, it was just a simple window for parents to chat. We started a couple of parents and then it grew bigger and bigger. As I said before, I wasn't taking it well. I was severely depressed by then, and I just needed to make sure that I wasn't the only one going through this in life. It started building up and more people started sharing more intimate stories and started sharing about, we started guiding each other because there was so little to know. So we started just guiding each other what kind of treatment to do, what kind of therapy, what kind of food, diets, all that. So one day it was very interesting that one mom mentioned, she just did a comment that in a very nice way, but as I remember it, in a way saying, you guys are all complaining and devastated about what's going on with your kids, but yet you're managing to take them to the best therapy centers and get them the same best material and best diet. What should I say that I cannot afford any of this? And to be honest with you, I mean, this was a big wake-up call for me because it did hit me and I realized that she's right. Like, what am I complaining about? Like, when you want to have a baby or you want to have a child, you don't have the option of picking up a catalog and choosing the descriptions. You love that child no matter what, and you're there to support that child no matter what. If he regressed or not, if he's special or not, if he's gifted or not, he's your child, and your job as a mom is to take the best care. And I really felt like an absolute hypocrite and shallow to be so depressed about all this. I realized that he's the joy of my life, regardless if he was verbal or not, regardless if he had any diagnosis. And I did realize how privileged I was that, yes, she's right. The fact that I can have insurance and take him to do his therapy or do different things. And this is where Autism in Dubai shifted from becoming just a support network to become more of an NOG. What I did is I started contacting, but just by myself, contacting centers that do provide therapy and asked them if they have any families that couldn't pay this month bill, or that their child will benefit from therapy, but they're not doing therapy because they couldn't afford the assessment, any kind of those things. And centers will get back to me. They'd be like, yeah, we have XY family that has X amount of money that they didn't settle, or those that couldn't follow up. And what I did is contact corporate sponsors, organizations, and see if they're willing to sponsor these kids, and did sort of a gala to show gratitude for them.
Fantastic.
But the nice thing about this is that no one knew who was behind this. So everything was as Autism in Dubai, and no one knew back then that I was behind it. So it was a beautiful feeling, because sometimes when I'm in activities with I don't even know who the sponsored families are. So it was a beautiful triangle that I would contact the center. They'll tell me they have this family. I contact the sponsor. The sponsor will issue a check directly to the center's name, but give it to the parents. So in this triangle, not even a dirham is coming my way, and no one needs to know who I am except from the center and the sponsor, but not really the parents. So you know what I mean? So it worked out perfectly well, because I was hearing the feedback of parents while I'm in activities or centers. And it was very cute, because a couple of times I did hear parents being like, well, you know what, there's this website called Autism in Dubai. If you contact them, they can support you. And sometimes by then I'd be like short on money. I'd be like, yeah, but they don't always support, you know? So,
Wow.
yeah. So it was cool, because sometimes I'd hear in front of me not knowing it was me. And it was the most fulfilling thing ever.
It's almost like a superhero that wears a mask and nobody knows who their identity is. That's the vibe that I'm getting from this story, actually.
The joy of life. It was the best feeling ever. I can tell you this.
That's amazing. Okay. And actually, I do want to circle back, because it's interesting that you said earlier that some parents would stay anonymous at the start because of culture, you said, which is such a sad thought to have, that, you know, culturally, it's almost like they feel embarrassed, that they're so scared to be judged for something that is so out of their control by their own community, you know, people who should be able to support them no matter what, you know? So based off all of that, what do you think, has there been a change since, you know, 2010 when you started this journey to now? Have you seen a change in the culture and the, you know, the stigma of this?
I have to admit that drastically. There's been huge improvement about acceptance, about awareness, education, centers. I mean, back then there was like one or maybe two decent centers that we can do therapy with. Now there are like plenty of centers, not as ridiculous of a waiting list as before. More corporates and companies and schools are doing more awareness. They're being more inclusive. Are we where we should be? We're definitely not. But I do see tremendous improvement from where we were 12 years ago. Yes.
That's very promising. So that's good. Okay, so I do want to talk about, you know, when Jad was at the age where it was time to start school. I know that you had a struggle with finding a school for him. Could you tell us about that whole situation?
So, as I mentioned, I was doing all what was needed for Jad. I was doing the therapy, I was doing the diet, I was doing the sensory diet, I was doing everything. And he improved a lot. He didn't go back to where he should be at his age, but there was an amazing improvement. And by the time he had to join grade 1, for me, it was an obvious thing that I'll just go apply to school and he'll be accepted. Unfortunately, he got rejected from 22 schools. And when I say 22, and that's again 12 years ago, or not, by then it's not 12, it's like maybe 8 years ago. It's wow. It was almost most of the schools in Dubai. And they would just say bluntly, it's because, your son is on the spectrum. And it was so evil in a way, thinking that I'm such an outgoing, outspoken person, confident, yet they make you feel that your child is not being accepted because of him, not because of them. So you don't question it.
How heartbreaking.
Exactly. And I always make it a point to mention this because it was evil. It was done in such a way that you feel so guilty about having a special needs child in a way that you don't even question it.
Like they didn't even try to sugarcoat it.
Exactly. So it happened to me, and this is why I keep on saying it to everyone. Please don't fall for this. We have beautiful kids that have to have exactly the same right as everyone else. And don't listen, just listen to your instinct. Don't listen to whoever tells you. They still have the same right. And they're even way more intelligent than most neurotypical kids. But yeah, unfortunately, I fell for it. And he got rejected from 22 schools, as I said. And
so then you took it upon yourself at that stage to...
So funny enough, this is why, as I told you, because they made me feel guilty, I didn't. I didn't know if homeschooling was not an option for my child because he's already autistic. He's already isolated socially. He's on the spectrum. So I didn't want to isolate him more. So I was a bit confused of, what's going on here until I go back to Autism in Dubai again. And one dad, I remember, he sent an email being like, well, thank you, Autism in Dubai. You sponsored my son's therapy for the past 2 years. But now that he's been in the age of going to school, he's not being accepted. What's the plan?
Right.
You had to see my reaction reading that email. I mean, I tremendously believe in karma. And I do believe that I opened this blog, yes, to help myself, but I also was happy to help others. And that email, in a way, shifted my life. It was an awakening call because I was like, wait, what do you mean your son's not being accepted mainstream? And I asked that question, that simple question that you think it's a common one of, guys, how many of you made it to mainstream school? And especially those that I was sponsoring, being like, I'm begging, I'm asking for favors, I'm working nonstop to have that therapy for your children to eventually make them lead a normal life. So why am I doing all this and raising all this money and awareness and therapy if at the end of the day, they're going to end up at square one, not going anywhere?
Right. So was this when you decided to open the first nonprofit school called Modern Alternative Education?
Yes. So this is when I found out almost none of them were accepted, and they all made us feel the same guilt of it's only your child. This is where I contact all the sponsors, and I was like, you know what? Instead of just sponsoring individuals, let's create a campus that protects our kids, that welcome them, accommodate them, and give them the rights that they deserve. And this is when, in 2016, Modern Alternative Education opened. Yes.
Excellent. So you found a solution for a problem that not just you, but many other families were facing.
And you would be shocked how many families I found out that they had to leave the UAE because of that issue. And once we opened, they relocated because, see, there's the special needs center and there's the mainstream. But what about the middle? What about the gap in the middle? Those kids that do have delays cannot function in mainstream, but their impairment is not severe enough to be in special needs. So this gap was lacking, unfortunately, here. And it was amazing discovery that we realized that not only people relocated, but we do have people from neighboring countries that ended up moving just to join us. Yes.
That must be such a great feeling for you to have, to realize that you did that. Like you have brought people back to the UAE and that you have actually had people move here just to be able to go to your school that you started.
Yes, you've made a real difference for people. It's fantastic.
Let's talk about the challenges that you faced when you first started setting up Modern Alternative Education. What were some of those challenges?
So first one, of course, funding, because it was a big project. Yes, I had some sponsors that were sponsoring individuals, but not big enough to sponsor such a project. That was a main issue, but in a way it was fixable. The bigger issue was the licensing, because as I mentioned, I mean, we don't fit in any criteria, and it's such a new concept that we're not under KHDA, we're not under Ministry of Education, because we need to be at only 15% special needs. And yet at the same time, we cannot be as a special need because we do have a curriculum. So there was licensing issues, let me put it that way. And the only reason I say it's a niche, unique idea or school is because Dubai is a niche, unique city. I mean, Dubai is one of the few cities in the world that the non-locals or non-Emiratis are more than the actual, like we're almost 85% non-Emiratis population here. So this is why we don't have the right of going to public schools, which is in the other countries. And usually these public schools are the one that protects our kids. So this is why it was a new, interesting mix to add, which no one was really understanding. And it took me multiple years, let's just say, to explain it, give them an idea what it was, and license it.
A really unique problem that you faced.
Because as I said, it doesn't happen in any city or any part of the world. We are what is basically the inclusion class in a governmental school. Let's just put it that way. And then, of course, the other problem would be I had to go to the US, get my training, get the curriculums, programs, equipment, material. So it did take a while to set up the school before opening it, because, I mean, obviously it goes without saying, I was opening it for my own son, so I wanted it to be best of the best.
Of course, that makes absolute sense. So it certainly was not an easy journey for you, going through the process of setting this up. But the benefits are, of course, fantastic.
Not at all. Yeah, especially that it's not my background. It's just something that I just was thrown into.
You're right. Now, my next question is a difficult one to bring up. And I will say at this outset, I'm really so sorry for your loss, Rana. Could you please tell us what happened on the 2nd of August, 2018?
So by 2018, we've been up and running for 2 years. As I said, everything was great. Everything was successful. The vision was happening. My son was tremendously happy. He was finally in a better place. He had friends and all that. And then August, he went to sleep and he just never woke up. And I just want to bring up and mention that. And I just want to mention to all parents that it has nothing to do with autism. And I always want to highlight it, that because I had so many calls and so many people and so many followers asking me, they're telling me we didn't know that autism was fatal. Autism is not fatal. It was just God's will, and his heart just stopped, and for no reason, just it was his time.
What a shock. What a tragedy.
So sorry.
A parent's nightmare, really. Ugh.
And then the following year, you decided to change the name of the school to Jad's Inclusion. Why did you feel that that was important for you to do?
Actually, it wasn't the following year as much as his birthday. So he passed away on August. January 31st, I felt that's the only gift I can give him, which is keeping his legacy and keeping his name alive. And I do believe that he was an angel. He was sent here for a reason. As I said, I was thrown into all this. This is not my background, not what I did for a living. And it's just, the timing is impeccable, because when he left, it was the first year that we were financially stable in the school. We had all the staff, we were settled, we were in the best place ever. And he went so peacefully that the way I at least like to believe it and see it is that he was an angel sent from God on a mission. Once it was accomplished, he just peacefully went back to where he belonged.
Wow. And just to ask you this, how old was he when he passed?
He was 11.
11, okay.
Yeah.
So it was his 12th birthday that you decided to change the name, right?
Yes. And it was so beautiful, because on his birthday, what I did is I changed the name, and I wanted to plant a tree for him at school. I wanted to plant an olive tree. But I mean, you as a human, you don't tend to know your abilities or your strength, because when the tree arrived and everything arrived, I just couldn't. I just broke in tears. I just couldn't keep myself up, and I collapsed. And what I told the receptionist, I remember that day, I was like, listen, I cannot do it, but I do want to do it on his day. So can you call parents asking approvals if it's okay with them for the kids to plant it instead? And I can tell you this, it was one of the most beautiful things, because 20 minutes after, I just saw car after car driving in and parking, and parents started coming, and even like men with their suits coming from work, and they're like, we want to be part of planting Jad's tree, because it's thanks to him that our kids belong and have a place. So it was a very, very touching moment that day.
It's so, so lovely. Yeah. Oh my God. I always love to hear that a community can come together in such a beautiful way and just be supportive when you need it most.
It was beautiful. It was beautiful. And even when, so here's the thing, going back to the community and that us parents only understand each other. Uh, when Jad also passed away, so the parents were sending me condolences, and the next question would be like, is modern alternative education going to close because Jad's not there anymore? Relatives and families would be like, what kind of evil people are these? Who cares about the school? You just lost your son. But I understood them. I understood their fear, because I was like, if that happened to me, because they knew if the school closed, they're going to go to square one with not finding anywhere, needing to leave country or needing to leave town. And this was the only thing. And this is why I thank my God every day for having the school, because I think that's the only thing that kept me up and running and waking up, getting out of bed every morning after losing Jad, is because 3rd of August, he passed away. 3rd of September, I was standing in the reception greeting the kids. It was my reason for living, to be honest.
It gave you a focus.
Absolutely.
Amazing. Rana, with everything that you've already done, what else do you hope to achieve with Jad's inclusion?
This is only the beginning. Let me just put it that way. There's so much to be done. As I said, I mean, yes, we did improve tremendously from 12 years till now, but schooling, education is not the only belonging. I mean, our kids, unfortunately, are still not integrated in the community. I don't see in the streets or in the supermarkets or any hotels or any job descriptions anyone with any disability or needs. The next thing we're working on now is we're finding internships to our older kids that are graduating, finding them jobs. We already started. We had a very successful, we did internships with Noon, with Hilton Hotel, our next apparel. We did the merchandise line. So we're focusing now more towards vocational and independence for the children. So we still have a long journey ahead.
That's excellent, though. So you started out back then, starting with the support and the forum that you had online, and then to the school, to the next level when they had the issue with the schools. And now when they're getting to the older age where you're helping them on their transition to being part of society and having opportunities like everyone else does. It's
absolutely
brilliant.
Basically covering all the necessary areas for them to live, like you said, just a regular life. That's so incredible and inspiring that you've put in so much of yourself into this. It's truly amazing. And you also have your kids that you are raising, so you're just juggling between all of this. It's really incredible.
I can be honest with you. I mean, I think it gives me more than what I give it. So it's worth every minute. It's the most fulfilling thing ever.
That's lovely. So to change topics a little bit, with the current situation of with COVID-19, with schools closing down and everything being online, how has that been a challenge for you and Jad's inclusion?
It's been awful, absolutely a nightmare. A lot of our kids have behavior issues, as I mentioned, and them being at home or being isolated is the worst thing you can do for them, because they need their routine, they need to go out, they need their structure, and just, most of our kids regressed. Unfortunately, a lot of them cannot do e-learning. They need to be there in class. All of them, I'm going to say, cannot wear masks because they have sensory issues or they're not understanding the concept of the mask or it's bothering them. So we did see a lot of regression towards our kids. It took them multiple steps back, not to mention the financial struggle, because we had to shut down for almost 9 months, yet we had the rent and all the costs with no income. So it was, and it is still, I mean, we're still coming out of it. It was an absolute nightmare and disaster for us. And I'm sure like everyone else.
To some degree, a harder struggle for children in that situation that really depended on the school so much.
So there is no doubt that you are an incredible and a very accomplished woman, and all the awards that you've gotten are only further proof of that. I guess the question on our mind is, how do you do it? And what advice would you give to other mothers of determined children?
That's a very good question, because I learned it the hard way. And the advice I would give is not only for parents of determined people, but for everyone, is just to live each day by its time, each day by its day. Not to plan to the future. I'm one of those. I plan 10 years ahead, but there's so much control you have over your life. So just enjoy every moment and live each day by each day, and, let the future decide.
That's excellent advice. And you're right, this applies to everyone. It's a really great mindset to have. So tell us, what is one of your proudest moments that you've had during your personal journey till now?
So it's a funny one because it doesn't really have to do with my journey as much as how much it touched me. When I was first opening Model Alternative Education, I mean, of course, I was spending long nights and all day setting up there and, doing everything. I was the engineer, electricianist, everything. I was involved with everything, and I had to hire, handymanis. And there's this guy. I don't know if you know, with the pickup cars that you see in the streets, and you just rent it for the day. It was one of the. Yes. So I asked one of, I was dealing with one of those, and he was so nice that I was like, you know what, just stay with me until we finish all this. And I wasn't paying him, and I need to say the amount because I wasn't paying him more than 150 a day, and he asked for it. So this is how basic he is. And he would just help me carry things around and drive things around, pick up stuff and all that. And one day I was very late in the office. Suddenly I see him coming, and I'm like, Muhammad, I didn't call you. What do you need? And he came with multiple boxes that had globes, books, some shelves. And I was like, what is this? With his super basic English, he's like, and I had, of course, on the walls, the sponsors' names of the school, right? And he comes to me and he's like, I've seen how hard you're working and how dedicated you are to this. I want to be part of it. And I was moving a family, I was moving houses, and they gave me these things that they don't want. So I want to donate to the school and be a sponsor to this amazing thing that you're doing.
Wow, how incredible.
Oh,
it was by far. And I made it clear. I was like, that if you sell these things, you can at least do like 1,000 or 2,000 dirhams, right? He's like, yes, I'm not doing it for the money. I want to be part of whatever you're doing. And funny enough, I don't even think he knew exactly what I was doing. I just think he saw how dedicated I was in it and how involved. But it truly touched my soul.
Yeah, I can imagine. So he also wanted to make his contribution.
And be part of whatever. Yes. So
beautiful.
It really meant a lot because he saw how dedicated and passionate I was about it. And yeah.
Wow, what a fantastic story. So Rana, after such a tough but inspiring journey that you've had so far, what plans do you have for the future? Are you working on anything new or exciting?
Pretty much what I mentioned earlier, which is basically the next step because we do have now a couple of kids that are 17, 18. So we are now working on opening more doors, more opportunities, more job opportunities, offers. And we're working now on expanding and opening a whole different section of merchandise, gardening and all that, which we already have the gardening, but to make it more professional wise. So yes, we do have now plans to expand and focus more on the older kids.
Excellent.
Very great. Okay, and actually I do want to ask, in terms of that, you've mentioned some really huge companies that you've already secured internships with in the past. So have you felt a warm kind of welcome from other companies? How are the reactions that you've been seeing from, you pitching to them for these opportunities?
So here is why it was beautiful and amazing, because it was a win-win. It was the experience for our kids and the knowledge and the inclusion for the other side, because I think they were doing it more as an obligation for their CSR campaign. But then when they meet our kids, most of the companies we dealt with, they were shocked of how capable they were. So it was a great eye-opener for them to see that, yes, our kids have potentials, and if you give them an opportunity. And funny enough, most of our kids, I'm not going to say all, are very OCD, so they're very perfectionist. So if you give them a task, they might do it, I'm almost positive they'll do it much better than a neurotypical person. So I guess it was an eye-opener for these big companies, and we were heading in a very nice place. Again, if it wasn't for COVID and all the restrictions that are happening, but hopefully we'll be back soon.
Excellent. So how can individuals and companies support these initiatives?
I mean, if they can contact us directly, our website is jadsinclusion.com. Our contact information there, number, everything's there. If they would like to contact us for internship, for support, for sponsoring, we'll be more than happy to get in touch with them directly.
Okay, thank you for that.
Amazing. Yes, thank you. Okay, so now we have come to an excitement segment of our show where we will ask you a few rapid fire questions. It's like a little game show that we like to play. Are you ready?
Absolutely.
Okay, great. So let's start. What was the one good thing that 2020 brought for you?
Slowing down.
That's true. That's good. Can you name one item on your bucket list?
Funny enough, I don't know why the first thing that popped up is bungee jumping, which I'm not really interested in, but I'm just...
Oh, weird.
Well, that's a bit scary. That was the first thing that crossed my mind, but okay, I'm just going to go with it, I guess.
Sounds good.
That's actually one that's on my bucket list because I'm scared of heights. So I've kind of made this mental note that I need to push myself to overcome my fear. So I'm like, yeah, bungee jumping is going to be my first step because I can't see myself jumping out of a plane.
It goes.
I will. Okay.
You are not our first guest to say that's one of the things on their bucket list. So that might
Really?
surprise you, yes.
No, but you know what? It came such a shock because I didn't even realize it was in my mind. So I guess, but when you're just taking me on the spot, it just came out. So interesting.
See, that's the point of this game. We're trying to get you to realize the things that you want before you even know that you want them. I'm kidding. Great.
Yes. Okay, Rana, can you name one of your hobbies?
Sleeping doesn't count, right?
Of course it can.
I don't think.
I would definitely go for sleeping. No, drawing. I love drawing.
Very nice. So what is one thing that you do every day, no matter how busy you are?
Remind my family how much I love them.
Oh, that's lovely. Thank you for playing along. Now, before we wrap up, we'd like to do our green pill moment. So for you, we'd like to ask, what was your green pill moment? The action or event that was the turning point for your career or your life?
That's a very easy question for me, I have to say. It wasn't event or moment. It was a person, obviously. And I would say, and I actually do call him my gift from God. I would say my son, Jad, because he transferred my life 180 degree. And I do believe he made me a much, much better person.
Wow, lovely. Thank you so much for sharing your and Jad's story with us today. It was so touching and truly an inspiring journey that you've had.
Absolutely,
Thank you
yes.
for having me. Thank you. It was an absolute pleasure. Thank you for having me.
So now before we just say goodbye, could you share with us the social media handles for Jad's Inclusion? You've already mentioned the website. Is there anywhere else that people could find you and follow you?
Yes, so we have a Facebook page and an Instagram account, and they're both under the name Jad's Inclusion. So JADS Inclusion.
Excellent. Thank you. So again, Rana, thank you so much for joining us today. I have, and I'm sure Shireen has, we've so enjoyed this conversation, and we are sure our audience is going to really enjoy it. We wish you and Jad's Inclusion all the very best.
Thank you. I really appreciate it. Thank you very much.
If you enjoy our conversations, please like and subscribe. See you next Wednesday.